The Velros throne. The crystalline spires of Velros Prime pierced the violet sky like broken promises. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, 12,000 alien dignitaries from across the Corvathian Empire waited in restless anticipation. Today marked the first formal contact between humanity and the oldest civilization in the galaxy. Chancellor Zhuangzi adjusted his ceremonial plates, the iridescent scales catching the light from a dozen artificial suns. His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the entrance portal. The humans had requested this audience 3 cycles ago, offering what they called peaceful integration into galactic society. Arrogance, Zhuangzi muttered to his aide, a slender Qixin named Varys. A species that discovered faster-than-light travel barely 2 generations ago thinks they can negotiate with an empire that has ruled for 10,000 years. Varys clicked his mandibles nervously. My lord, the intelligence reports suggest caution. The humans have expanded to 47 star systems in just... I've read the reports. Zhuangzi's tone could have frozen plasma. Speed of expansion means nothing without the wisdom to wield power. They are children playing with tools they don't understand. The great doors opened with a sound like thunder made gentle. The crowd fell silent. A single human walked through. He was unremarkable by any standard. Medium height, perhaps 6 feet. Dark hair graying at the temples. A simple black suit that seemed almost primitive compared to the elaborate robes and bioarmor filling the chamber. No weapons visible. No entourage. No display of power or prestige. Just one man walking across a floor designed to make visitors feel small. That's their envoy? Zhuangzi couldn't hide his disappointment. One unarmed diplomat? The human stopped at the designated position, 50 meters from the Chancellor's throne. His eyes, a strange blue-gray color, swept across the assembled masses without fear or deference. When he spoke, his voice carried through the hall with unexpected clarity. I am Kiran Vasher, speaking for humanity. I come seeking peaceful coexistence with the Corvathian Empire. Zhuangzi leaned forward. You speak our language adequately, human. But you misunderstand your position. The Corvathian Empire does not negotiate with emerging species. We integrate them. Your 47 systems will be absorbed into our empire. Your people will pay tribute. Your military will disband. You have 1 standard cycle to comply. Kiran's expression didn't change. That's unacceptable. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Several delegates from subservient species gasped audibly. No one spoke to the Chancellor this way. Zhuangzi's laugh was like grinding stone. Unacceptable? You stand alone, human, in a hall filled with the representatives of 8,000 worlds. Your entire species could fit in the shadow of our empire. What makes you think you have any choice in this matter? Because I'm giving you 1 chance, Kiran said quietly. 1 opportunity to walk away from this mistake before it costs you everything. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Zhuangzi rose from his throne, his full 3-meter height dominating the space. Is that a threat, human? Did you come here, alone and unarmed, to threaten the Corvathian Empire? No, Kiran replied, his voice still calm. I came here to warn you. There's a difference. Seize him, Zhuangzi commanded. 20 Imperial guards emerged from alcoves around the chamber, their armor gleaming, their plasma weapons charged. They were Vorlax warriors, each standing over 7 feet tall, each trained from birth in 1,000 ways to kill. They surrounded Kiran in a perfect tactical formation. The human didn't move. He simply stood there watching Zhuangzi with those unervingly calm eyes. Take him to the detention levels, the Chancellor ordered. Let him contemplate his species' future from a cell. In 1 cycle we'll broadcast his surrender across all human worlds. As the guards closed in, Kiran spoke 1 last time. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but somehow it carried to every corner of that vast hall. You should have accepted the peace. Then they took him. The cell. The detention level of Velros Prime existed 3 miles beneath the planet's surface, carved from bedrock that had stood since the world's formation. The Empire kept its most dangerous prisoners here, in cells designed to hold beings with powers that could crack mountains or bend minds. Kiran sat on the metal bench in his cell, hands clasped loosely in his lap. The energy field across the entrance hummed with enough power to vaporize anything that touched it. 4 guards stood watch outside, Vorlax warriors who never slept, never tired, never failed in their duty. He'd been there for 3 hours when Varys, the Chancellor's aide, appeared at the cell entrance. The Qixin's multifaceted eyes studied Kiran with obvious curiosity. You're remarkably calm for someone who just doomed his entire species, Varys observed. Kiran looked up. Am I? The Chancellor is finalizing the invasion fleet now. 12 battle groups. 4,000 ships. They'll reach your nearest colonies in 2 cycles. Varys tilted his head. I've studied your species since you made first contact. You're emotional creatures. I expected anger, fear, desperation. Instead, you sit there as if waiting for a scheduled appointment. I am waiting, Kieran said. For what? Rescue? Your people don't even know you're imprisoned. We've jammed all communications. Even if they did know, they couldn't reach you before. I'm not waiting for rescue. Kieran's voice was patient, almost kind. I'm waiting for you to realize your mistake. The Chancellor still has time to recall those fleets. After that, I can't help you. Varys' mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You continue with these cryptic warnings. You realize they make you sound delusional? One human cannot stand against an empire. You're right, Kieran agreed. One human can't. Then why? But I'm not just one human, Varys. I'm the human they sent. Something in his tone made Varys step back involuntarily. There was no threat in Kieran's voice, no anger or aggression. Yet somehow, those calm words carried more weight than any shout could have. Who are you? Varys whispered. Kieran stood slowly, walking to the edge of the energy field. The light played across his unremarkable face, casting shadows that seemed deeper than they should be. Before we achieved faster-than-light travel, my species spent thousands of years killing each other. We got very, very good at it. Wars that consumed continents. Weapons that could end worlds. We created things that would make your imperial arsenal look like children's toys. And through all that horror, through all that bloodshed, certain individuals emerged. People who understood warfare not as a science but as an art form. He paused, his blue-gray eyes reflecting the energy field's light. I am the best of the very, very worst, Varys. I'm the nightmare that made other nightmares afraid. Humanity didn't send a diplomat to negotiate with your empire. They sent me to give you a chance to survive. Varys felt his respiratory slits constricting. You're one soldier. What can you possibly? The lights went out. Emergency systems activated immediately, bathing the corridor in red light. But in that moment of darkness, something changed. Varys couldn't identify what exactly. The guards were still at their posts. Kieran was still in his cell. Everything appeared the same. But it wasn't. What did you do? Varys demanded. Nothing yet. Kieran had sat back down. That was just the first ship arriving. What ship? We have sensor arrays that can detect a pebble entering orbit. There's no way. Your sensors were designed to detect ships that follow the rules of physics you understand. Humanity learned to break those rules a long time ago. Kieran's voice remained gentle, almost apologetic. The ship that just arrived is the Whisper. She's carrying a message for your Chancellor. After he reads it, he'll have one final chance to recall the invasion fleet. The Chancellor doesn't respond to threats. It's not a threat, Kieran said. It's an obituary. For everyone who died on the 3 Corvathian scout ships that attacked the human colony on Tertia 7 last year. Varys went very still. Those ships disappeared into a stellar anomaly. The investigation concluded. They were destroyed. By me. The stellar anomaly story was the cover the Council of Admirals created to avoid admitting that 3 of their ships were eliminated without firing a shot. Kieran leaned back against the wall. Your empire has been prodding our borders for months, Varys. Testing our defenses. Attacking our colonies. Each time, someone like me showed up and made the problem go away quietly. We wanted peace. We tried diplomacy. But your Chancellor took our restraint for weakness. The facility shook suddenly, a tremor that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. What was that? Varys' voice climbed an octave. That was the Whisper positioning herself above this facility. She's waiting for my signal. Signal? You're in a containment cell. You have no technology, no communications. I am the signal, Varys. Kieran's expression was sad now. My heartbeat is being monitored by systems your sensors can't detect. If it stops, or if it becomes erratic in a way that indicates I'm under duress, the Whisper will act. Act how? She'll remove this facility. This city. This continent. She'll do it so precisely that the rest of Velros Prime will survive. Your people will rebuild. But they'll do it knowing what it costs to harm a human envoy. Varys' legs felt weak. You're bluffing. No species would commit such an atrocity over one individual. You're right again. Most wouldn't. Kieran stood once more, approaching the energy field. But humanity remembers what happens when you let aggression go unanswered. We remember the cost of appearing weak to predators. So when we send someone into danger, we send them with a promise. You are not expendable. You are not alone. And anyone who harms you will learn exactly what human rage looks like when refined by 10,000 years of warfare. The facility shook again, harder this time. Varys turned and ran. The message. Chancellor Ziwa stood in the command center, staring at the holographic display with two of his four eyes. The other two were closed in concentration, a sign of deep thought among his species. It's impossible, Fleet Admiral Kreshnex insisted. Our sensors show nothing. The gravitational readings are normal. There's no energy signature, no thermal bloom, nothing. Yet every member of the 7th Fleet stationed in orbit is reporting the same visual confirmation. The hologram showed it clearly. Hovering exactly 1,000 meters above the detention facility was something. It looked like a ship, but its geometry hurt to observe. Angles that shouldn't connect did. Surfaces that should reflect light seemed to absorb it while simultaneously glowing. It was approximately 300 meters long, but seemed both smaller and larger depending on how you looked at it. The Whisper. It appeared simultaneously on visual, infrared, and ultraviolet spectrums, Kreshnex continued, his tail twitching with agitation. But it doesn't exist in any other measurable way. Our weapons can't get a lock. It's like trying to target a ghost. Varys burst into the command center, his usually composed demeanor shattered. Chancellor. The human he's not, we need to. Calm yourself, Zuexthara commanded, though his own voice lacked its usual certainty. Report properly. Varys took several breaths. The human claims that ship is monitoring his vital signs. If he's harmed, it will destroy the entire detention facility and everything above it. Preposterous. One ship against an empire? Even if it could destroy the facility, my fleets would reduce it to atoms. Chancellor, Kreshnex said quietly, I recommend we proceed with caution. We don't understand this technology. Until we do, we appear weak. Ziwa-Xthara's scales flushed an angry crimson. The entire galaxy is watching. If we show fear of one human and his invisible ship, every subject species in the Empire will question our authority. A communication officer looked up from her station, her face pale. Chancellor, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from inside the detention cell. That's impossible. The cells block all communications. Nevertheless, sir. It's addressed to you personally. Audio and text. The human is requesting permission to deliver a message. Ziwa-Xthara's laugh was bitter. Permission? He's a prisoner. Play it. Kieran's voice filled the command center, calm and clear. Chancellor Ziwa-Xthara, I'm sending you a document. It contains the names, service records, and photographs of the 137 Korvathian crew members who died when your scout ships attacked Tertia 7. They were sons and daughters, husbands and wives, parents and children. They served your empire loyally. They followed orders they believed were just. And they died in seconds because their commanders made the same mistake you're making now. A holographic file appeared in the center of the room, expanding into pages of data. Faces stared out from service photos. Kreshnex made a choking sound. One of those faces was his nephew. Kieran's voice continued, I want you to understand something, Chancellor. I didn't kill them because I enjoyed it. I didn't kill them because I hate your species. I killed them because they were attacking civilians and I had the power to stop it. That's what humanity sent me to do. Stop threats. Protect the innocent. And try, desperately, to find a way to do it without turning the galaxy into a graveyard. The file expanded further, showing tactical readouts of the engagement. The Korvathian ships had never had a chance. Whatever weapons the humans had used, they'd bypassed shields, armor, and countermeasures as if they didn't exist. The officers who ordered that attack were executed by your own military tribunal, Kieran said. The Council of Admirals covered it up because they knew what it meant. They knew that humanity has technologies you don't understand and can't counter. They knew that peaceful coexistence was your only option. But you didn't listen to your own admirals, Chancellor. You listened to your pride. Zuexthara stared at the faces of the dead. He'd been told about the tribunal but not the details. The council had assured him the lost ships were an anomaly, nothing to concern the Chancellor himself. They'd lied. I'm going to make you an offer, Kieran continued. It's the last one you'll get. Release me. Recall your invasion fleets. Agree to negotiate a real treaty with humanity, one that respects both our sovereignties. Do this and the Whisper leaves. No one else dies. Your empire remains intact and we find a way to coexist. And if I refuse? Ziwa-Xthara found himself asking the empty air. Then I stop sending the signal that tells the Whisper I'm safe. And you learn what happens when humanity decides that peaceful coexistence isn't possible. There was profound sadness in Kieran's voice now. I've seen war, Chancellor. Real war. The kind that doesn't end with treaties but with extinction. I've personally participated in operations that erased civilizations from existence. Not because I wanted to, but because I was very, very good at it and someone had to be. The transmission paused. When Kieran spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I don't want to do that to your people. I don't want your children to grow up in a galaxy where humanity is the monster in the dark. But I will do it if you force my hand. Because my duty isn't to make friends. It's to ensure that humanity survives no matter the cost. The transmission ended. The command center was silent. Finally, Kreshnek spoke. Chancellor, I've reviewed the tactical data from the Tertia 7 incident. If this information is accurate, if the humans have deployed even a fraction of these capabilities across their fleets. He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Ziwa turned to face his admiral. Speak plainly. We cannot win this war. Even if we deployed every ship in the Empire, we'd be fighting an enemy we don't understand with weapons we can't counter. The casualty projections. Kreshnek pulled up additional files, his hands shaking. Conservative estimates suggest we'd lose 40 to 60% of our forces before we even understood what was killing us. Unacceptable, Ziwa said, but the word lacked conviction. Varys stepped forward, his usual deference gone. Chancellor, I've spent cycles studying human culture and history. They're not bluffing. They're a species that survived by learning to kill each other in increasingly efficient ways for thousands of years. When they finally unified and looked outward, they brought all that accumulated horror with them. And Kieran Vasher. He pulled up a file. He's not exaggerating about his role. Before he became an envoy, he led something called the Terminus Protocol. What's that? I don't know. Human records classify it at levels our intelligence can't penetrate. But the references I've found suggest it was a program designed to end threats before they became existential. Quickly. Quietly. Completely. Ziwa looked at the faces of the dead again. 137 loyal crew members, erased in moments by one human following orders. How many humans like him do they have? He asked. Unknown, Varys replied. But the fact that they sent him alone suggests they have confidence in his abilities. The Chancellor's scales dimmed, losing their vibrant color. It was a sign of shame among his people, an admission of error. Recall the invasion fleets, he said quietly. Chancellor? Kreshnek couldn't hide his surprise. Recall them. Now, before we commit an act of aggression we can't take back. Ziwa straightened to his full height, forcing dignity into his posture. And prepare a diplomatic delegation. If we must negotiate with the humans, we'll do it properly as equals rather than subjects. The Council will object, Varys warned. The Council lied to me. They'll accept my decision or join the dead they concealed. The Chancellor's voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of imperial authority. And someone tell the human he's free to go. The truth. Kieran walked through the corridors of Velrose Prime's administrative complex, no longer a prisoner but still surrounded by guards. This time they were an honor escort rather than captors, though several kept their hands near their weapons anyway. The Chancellor had granted him an audience in the private council chamber, away from the thousands of eyes that had witnessed his initial arrest. Politics, Kieran understood. Ziwa needed to save face while also acknowledging the threat humanity represented. The council chamber was smaller than the Grand Assembly Hall but no less impressive. Walls of flowing water separated different sections of the room, each stream carrying bioluminescent organisms that painted patterns in the air. At the center, a circular table made from a single piece of crystallized starlight housed 12 seats. Only 3 were occupied. Chancellor Ziwa sat at the head. Fleet Admiral Kreshnek to his right. Varys to his left. Please sit, Ziwa gestured to the seat directly across from him. Kieran sat, noting the tactical disadvantage of the position, 3 against 1 with his back to the largest entrance. Old habits died hard. The invasion fleets have been recalled, Ziwa began without preamble. All Korvathian military vessels have been ordered to withdraw from human-claimed space. I've authorized the release of diplomatic proposals for a non-aggression treaty between our peoples. That's a start, Kieran said. A start? Kreshnek's tail twitched. We've conceded to every demand you made. You've stopped attacking us. That's not the same as genuine peace. Kieran leaned forward slightly. Chancellor, you need to understand something. Humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. We don't want to be the nightmare species that makes others afraid. But we will not be victims. We will not bow. And we will not allow our people to be threatened. Your species is powerful, Zyxthra acknowledged. More than we realized. But power alone doesn't make you special. The galaxy has seen powerful species before. Most collapsed under their own strength, destroying themselves through internal conflict or external overreach. You're wondering if that will happen to us, Kieran said. Yes. Kieran was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. It might. We've come close before. But we learned something during our worst periods, something that the Korvathian Empire seems to have forgotten. And what's that? That true strength isn't measured by how many you can conquer, but by how many you choose not to. Kieran's voice was gentle but firm. Your empire is vast. You rule 8,000 worlds. But how many of those worlds chose to join you? How many had a real voice in their governance? How many of your subjects are actually allies rather than slaves wearing nicer chains? Zyxthra's scales flushed, but he didn't interrupt. Humanity tried the empire route once, Kieran continued. Many times, actually. Every major culture on Earth attempted to conquer and rule their neighbors at some point. And every single one of those empires eventually fell, not because they lacked military might, but because you can't build lasting peace on subjugation. So you claim moral superiority? Kreshnex asked, his tone sharp. No. I claim we learned from our mistakes. Eventually. Kieran smiled sadly. We're not better than you, Admiral. We're just further along in understanding what our worst impulses cost us. The weapons I used against your scout ships? They were developed during humanity's darkest periods. Times when we turned that innovative, murderous creativity on each other. Billions died before we finally understood that survival required cooperation, not domination. Varys spoke up, his voice thoughtful. The Terminus Protocol. What was it really? Kieran's expression hardened. It was humanity's contingency plan for first contact going catastrophically wrong. A program designed to ensure that if we encountered hostile alien species, we could survive the initial engagement and respond with overwhelming force. He paused. I was one of the lead operatives. We trained for every scenario. Ambush, invasion, genocide. We developed technologies and tactics specifically to counter threats we hadn't even encountered yet. That seems paranoid, Kreshnex observed. Maybe. But we'd spent thousands of years learning what happened when one culture encountered another with superior technology. Usually, the less advanced culture was destroyed or enslaved. We weren't willing to let that be humanity's fate. Kieran's eyes were distant now, seeing memories he clearly wished he could forget. The Terminus Protocol was retired after our first peaceful contact with the Zephyrians. We realized that not every species in the galaxy was hostile. But the training remained. The technology remained. And when your scout ships attacked Tertia 7, you activated, Zyxthra finished. I was activated. Along with protocols across 47 human systems. Kieran looked directly at the Chancellor. Do you understand what I'm telling you? You didn't just threaten one colony. You triggered a response network that spans our entire civilization. Right now, there are individuals like me positioned at every major choke point in human space, ready to respond to exactly this kind of aggression. The Whisper isn't alone. She has sisters. Hundreds of them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Why tell us this? Varys asked quietly. Isn't that revealing your strategic capabilities? Because I want you to understand the choice you're making. Kieran stood, walking to one of the water walls. The bioluminescent organisms scattered at his approach, then slowly returned. Chancellor, you can continue down the path of empire. You can try to expand through conquest and subjugation. And if you do, you'll eventually come into conflict with humanity again. Maybe next month, maybe next century. But it will happen. You turn back to face them. Or you can choose a different path. You can become an example of what true galactic leadership looks like. A civilization that protects rather than dominates. That lifts up rather than crushes down. That makes allies rather than subjects. Kieran's voice carried weight now, not threat but profound truth. The galaxy is going to change, Chancellor. Humanity's emergence isn't the end of that change, just the beginning. More species will develop faster than light travel. More civilizations will reach out to the stars. The question is, what kind of galaxy will they find? One ruled by fear and might? Or one governed by cooperation and mutual respect? Zyxthra stood as well, his full height impressive even across the room. You speak of ideals. But governance requires pragmatism. The strong rule because someone must and the weak cannot. The strong rule because they can, Kieran corrected. But should they? And more importantly, what happens when something stronger comes along? He gestured to the stars visible through the chamber's transparent ceiling. The universe is vast, Chancellor. Humanity explored less than 1% of our own galaxy before we met you. What happens when we encounter something that makes us look primitive? Something that could destroy humanity as easily as I destroyed your scout ships. What's your point? My point is that building a galaxy on dominance is building on sand. Eventually, someone stronger comes along and the whole structure collapses. But building on cooperation, on genuine alliance, on mutual benefit, that creates something that can withstand any challenge. Kieran returned to his seat. I'm asking you to help humanity build that second kind of galaxy. Not because you're afraid of us, but because it's the right thing to do. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, Kreshnek spoke. You're asking us to voluntarily reduce our own power. To give our subject species autonomy they might use against us. To abandon 10,000 years of precedent. I'm asking you to evolve, Kieran replied simply. The same way humanity had to evolve or destroy ourselves. It's not easy. It requires admitting that the old ways don't work anymore. But the alternative is stagnation at best, extinction at worst. Ziwa returned to his seat, his scales cycling through colors that Kieran couldn't interpret. When he spoke, his voice was tired. You've given me much to consider. This meeting is concluded. We'll begin formal negotiations tomorrow, once both sides have had time to prepare proper diplomatic teams. Kieran stood and bowed, not in submission but in respect. Thank you for listening, Chancellor. That's all I came here to ask. As Kieran walked toward the exit, Varys called out, The Whisper. Will it leave now? Kieran paused at the doorway. When I'm safely aboard our diplomatic ship and heading back to human space, yes. She'll withdraw. But Chancellor? He looked back one final time. There are always more ships. Remember that. Not as a threat but as a reminder. Humanity is here. We're not going away. And we're hoping, desperately, that we can all figure out how to share this galaxy without drowning it in blood. Then he was gone, leaving three of the most powerful individuals in the Corvathian Empire sitting in silence, contemplating a future they'd never imagined they'd have to face. The cost. 3 days later, aboard the human diplomatic vessel Concordance, Kieran stood in front of a secure communications terminal. The holographic display showed 12 faces, each representing a different branch of humanity's defense and diplomatic corps. Admiral Chen, commander of the Terminus fleet, spoke first. Your mission was a success. The Corvathian invasion forces have withdrawn completely. Initial diplomatic overtures are surprisingly genuine. Whatever you said to their chancellor, it worked. I told him the truth, Kieran replied. Mostly. Mostly? Director Asha Okonkwo, head of the Diplomatic Intelligence Service, leaned forward. Care to elaborate? Kieran took a breath. I implied we have hundreds of ships like the Whisper positioned across human space. We have 17. I suggested the Terminus protocol was still fully operational and ready to deploy. It was mothballed 2 years ago. And I claimed I could have destroyed the detention facility with pinpoint accuracy while leaving the rest of Velrose Prime intact. You can't. Chen asked. The Whisper could level everything within a 1,000-mile radius. Pinpoint accuracy was a polite fiction to avoid seeming like monsters. The faces on the screen exchanged glances. Secretary General Kwame Asante, the highest-ranking civilian in human government, steepled his fingers. So you negotiated with a bluff. I negotiated with strategic ambiguity, Kieran corrected. There's a difference. Everything I told them about humanity's capabilities was true. I just allowed them to extrapolate those capabilities beyond their actual scope. If they choose to believe we're stronger than we are, that works in our favor. And if they call that bluff? Okonkwo pressed. Then we have a problem. But I don't think they will, at least not anytime soon. The loss of those scout ships genuinely shocked their military command. They're reassessing everything they thought they knew about human technology. Kieran pulled up tactical files. I've been analyzing their response patterns. The Corvathians are powerful, but they're also risk-averse. 10,000 years of dominance has made them cautious about real challenges. They'll test our borders, probe our defenses, but they won't commit to full-scale war without being absolutely certain they can win. Which buys us time, Shin said, understanding dawning. Time to actually build those defenses you claimed we already had. Exactly. Kieran nodded. The Terminus protocol may be mothballed, but its research wasn't wasted. We have the blueprints. We have the theories. We just need resources and time to implement them. General Marcus Reeves, head of Colonial Defense, spoke up. Speaking of resources, the Senate is already questioning the budget allocations for deep space defense platforms. They're saying the Corvathian threat has passed, that we can redirect funds to colonial development. Kieran's expression hardened. That's exactly the wrong lesson to take from this. Chancellor Zyxthara backed down because he believed we could destroy his empire. If we don't actually build the capabilities I claimed we had, the next crisis won't end with negotiations. Then we need to make the Senate understand that, Asante said. Kieran, I'm authorizing you to prepare a classified briefing for the Security Council. Full details on what happened in that detention cell, what you told the Corvathians, and what we actually need to make those claims reality. Understood, sir. The Secretary General continued, but I want to be clear about something. This strategy of strategic ambiguity, of allowing potential enemies to believe we're more dangerous than we actually are, it has a shelf life. Eventually, someone will test those claims. And when they do, we need to be ready with substance, not just smoke and mirrors. I agree, Kieran said. That's why I'm recommending we fast-track the Ghost Fleet initiative. We can't build hundreds of ships like the Whisper in a year. But we can build automated defense platforms that use similar stealth technology. Position them at key points across human space, and suddenly our defensive posture looks a lot more credible. Okonkwo pulled up projected costs. Her expression was grim. The Ghost Fleet would consume 40% of our annual defense budget. For 5 years. The alternative is hoping every species we encounter is as reasonable as the Corvathians turned out to be, Kieran replied. I don't like those odds. Chin cleared his throat. There's another matter we need to discuss. The Whisper's captain, Commander Sarah Vex, filed a report. She says there were several moments during your captivity when you exhibited signs of extreme stress. Your heart rate spiked 3 times, nearly triggering her automated response protocols. Kieran's jaw tightened. That was under control. Was it? Chen's tone was gentle but firm. Kieran, you've been operational for 6 months straight. Before that, you spent 3 years running Terminus missions. You've seen more combat than most soldiers see in a lifetime. When was the last time you took leave? I'm fine, Admiral. That's not what your biometric data says. You're experiencing symptoms consistent with deep stress trauma. Your cortisol levels are elevated. Your sleep patterns are erratic. If you were any other operative, I'd be mandating psychological evaluation and immediate stand-down. But I'm not any other operative, Kieran said quietly. I'm one of 17 people qualified to run Terminus-level operations. We don't have the luxury of benching personnel because they're stressed. We also don't have the luxury of losing operatives to burnout or psychological collapse, Okonkwo countered. Kieran, no one questions your capabilities or your dedication. But you're human. You have limits. So what are you suggesting? Asante intervened. We're suggesting you take 2 weeks of leave. Real leave, not standby operational status. Return to Earth. See family. Remember what you're fighting for beyond tactical objectives and strategic goals. Kieran wanted to argue. Every instinct told him that stepping away now, when humanity's position was still uncertain, was dangerous. But he also knew they were right. He'd felt it during his captivity, the way his control had slipped just for moments. The way rage had threatened to overwhelm calculation. 2 weeks, he agreed finally. But I want full briefings every 48 hours. If anything changes, we'll pull you back immediately, Chin promised. The Concordance will have you home in 3 days. Use the time well, Kieran. That's an order. The transmission ended, leaving Kieran alone in the communications room. He stared at his reflection in the dark screen. The man looking back seemed older than his 42 years. Gray had crept into his temples. Lines had etched themselves around his eyes. The cost of being humanity's shield was written across his face. His communicator chimed. Commander Vex's voice came through. Sir, we have an incoming transmission. It's from Velrose Prime. From Varys, the Chancellor's aide. He's requesting a private conversation with you. Kieran frowned. Routed here. Secure channel. A moment later, Varys' multifaceted eyes appeared on the screen. The Chishin looked nervous, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Envoy Vasher. Thank you for accepting my call. What can I do for you, Varys? I wanted to ask you something. Privately. Off any official record. Varys glanced around, ensuring he was alone. When you were in that cell, you said you were the best of the very worst. You spoke of operations that erase civilizations. I've been researching human history since our conversation. I found references to wars, genocides, horrors beyond counting. But I can't find any record of someone named Kieran Vasher before 15 years ago. Kieran's expression remained neutral. What's your question? Who were you before? Before you became an envoy, before the Terminus Protocol, before all of this? Who was Kieran Vasher when he was just a man? For a long moment, Kieran didn't respond. Then slowly he sat down. You won't find records because that name didn't exist before 15 years ago. It's a constructed identity, built on the ashes of who I used to be. And who was that? Someone who made a mistake. A catastrophic one. Kieran's voice was distant. I was part of an elite military unit during the last major conflict on Earth, the Resource Wars. Our mission was to neutralize a terrorist organization that had seized control of fusion reactors in the Pacific Alliance territories. Intelligence said they were going to cause meltdowns unless their demands were met. Varys leaned closer to his screen, transfixed. We went in fast and hard. Perfect execution. Eliminated the terrorist cell in under 4 minutes. Secured the reactors. Mission accomplished. Kieran's hands clenched. Except the intelligence was wrong. They weren't terrorists. They were civilian engineers who discovered evidence of government corruption in reactor maintenance. They'd seized the facilities to prevent actual meltdowns that would have killed millions. And you? And I killed 17 innocent people trying to save lives. Kieran's voice was hollow. By the time we realized the truth, it was too late. The government covered it up. Declared it classified. Gave my unit medals for preventing a disaster. But we knew. We all knew what we'd done. What happened to your unit? 3 committed suicide within a year. 2 turned to substance abuse and were discharged. The rest accepted the lie, convinced themselves it was just following orders. Kieran looked directly at Varys. I couldn't do either. So I spent the next 5 years tracking down everyone involved in the false intelligence report. Every official who'd signed off on it. Every politician who'd benefited from the cover-up. Every person who'd turned innocent engineers into terrorists to hide their own crimes. Varys' mandibles went still. What did you do? I destroyed their lives. Not with violence, that would have been too quick. I exposed their corruption. I released evidence that ended careers, dissolved fortunes, sent people to prison. I dismantled the entire network that had used my unit as unknowing executioners. Kieran's smile was bitter. I was very thorough, very patient, and very, very angry. They came for you. They tried. Assassination attempts. Legal prosecution. Character assassination. But I'd been trained by the best military in human history. I knew how to disappear, how to strike from shadows, how to make problems go away permanently. He paused. That's when Director Okonkwo found me. She was running counterintelligence at the time. She said I had 2 choices: continue my vendetta until I inevitably died or was captured, or put my skills to use protecting humanity from real threats. The Terminus Protocol. The Terminus Protocol, Kieran confirmed. They gave me a new name, a new identity, a new purpose. And they gave me something I needed desperately, a way to make 17 deaths mean something. Every mission I completed, every threat I neutralized, every human life I saved was a payment on a debt I can never fully repay. Varys was quiet for a moment. That's why you tried so hard to avoid violence with us. Why you warned us repeatedly. You didn't want to add more deaths to your conscience. I've killed hundreds since joining the Terminus Protocol, Varys. Each one necessary. Each one justified. And each one a weight I carry. Kieran stood. Your scout ships attacked a civilian colony. They were targeting agricultural stations, research facilities, schools. I could have let them continue, could have waited for a more surgical solution. But while I waited, more civilians would have died. So I made the choice. I always make the choice. The choice to be death. The choice to be the one who bears the cost so others don't have to. Kieran's voice was firm now. That's what humanity needs, Varys. Not heroes. Not warriors seeking glory. We need people willing to do terrible things, carry terrible burdens, and live with terrible consequences so that the rest of our species doesn't have to. That's why they sent you alone, Varys realized. Not because you're the only one who could handle the mission. But because you're the only one who could handle the weight of what might have been necessary. Smart species, the Kixians. Varys' expression, as much as Kieran could read it, seemed sad. I don't think you're a monster, Envoy Vasher. I think you're someone who's paid an impossibly high price to ensure others never have to. But I worry about what that cost has done to you. So do I, Kieran admitted quietly. So do I. The return. Earth hadn't changed in 6 months, but somehow it felt different to Kieran. Or perhaps he was the one who'd changed. He stood on the observation deck of the Pacific Orbital Station, looking down at the blue marble that had birthed humanity's chaos and brilliance in equal measure. Beautiful, isn't it? Kieran turned to find an older woman approaching. Dr. Elena Reeves, no relation to General Marcus Reeves despite the shared surname. She was the chief psychologist for the Terminus program, or had been before it was mothballed. Dr. Reeves. I wasn't aware you were still with the program. I'm not officially. But when Admiral Chin told me you were coming home, I thought you might want to talk. She joined him at the viewport. How long has it been since we last spoke? 3 years. Right before the Tertia 7 incident. And how many operations have you run since then? Kieran didn't answer immediately. He knew she already knew. 47. 47 confirmed hostile encounters. Successfully resolved with minimal collateral damage. Textbook Terminus protocol execution. Elena's voice was gentle but probing. And how many of those 47 keep you awake at night? All of them. Even the ones where you saved lives? Especially those. Kieran turned to face her. Because every time I succeed they send me out again. Every time I prove I can bear the weight they add more weight. And I know, that eventually I'm going to break. I'm going to make a mistake. And people are going to die because I wasn't strong enough. Elena nodded slowly. The 17 engineers. The 17 engineers, Kieran confirmed. Dr. Reeves, I see their faces every time I close my eyes. I know their names, their families, their dreams. I've memorized every detail of their lives because I ended them. And no matter how many threats I stop, how many lives I save, I can't balance that equation. You're not supposed to balance it, Kieran. That's not how guilt works. That's not how healing works. Then how does it work? You learn to carry it without letting it crush you. You acknowledge the mistake without letting it define your entire existence. She gestured to Earth below. There are 8 billion people down there. Most of them will never know your name. They'll never know what you've done to keep them safe. But they're alive, Kieran. They're falling in love, raising children, creating art, solving problems, living lives. Because of you and others like you. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to give you perspective. Elena's tone became firmer. You've turned yourself into a living weapon, Kieran. But weapons aren't meant to think, to feel, to carry the burden of every decision. You're still a person. You're still allowed to want things beyond the next mission. What if I don't know what I want anymore? Then you figure it out. That's what this leave is for. She pulled out a small data chip. I've arranged for you to visit someone. She's been asking about you for 2 years. Kieran took the chip, reading the information. His expression shifted. Surprise, fear, longing, all flickering across his face in rapid succession. I can't. She doesn't, she shouldn't. She knows everything, Kieran. I briefed her myself with authorization from Director Okonkwo. She knows about the engineers. She knows about Terminus. She knows about Tertia 7. And she still wants to see you. Why would she? Because you were her big brother. And she spent 15 years wondering what happened to you after you disappeared. Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. Go see Maya. Let someone who knew you before all of this remind you who you used to be. Maybe who you still could be. The house was modest, located in the San Francisco Arcology District. Kieran stood outside for 10 minutes before finally pressing the door chime. Maya Vasher. No, Maya Chin now, according to the records, opened the door. She looked older, obviously. 34 now, where she'd been 19 the last time he'd seen her. But her eyes were the same. Sharp, intelligent, full of questions. Kieran. Her voice cracked slightly. It's really you. It's really me. Or what's left of me. She pulled him into a hug without hesitation. Kieran stood rigid for a moment, then slowly returned the embrace. When they separated, there were tears on her cheeks. Come in. Please. I made coffee. Do you still drink coffee? God, I don't even know if you still drink coffee. I do. Same way as before. Too much sugar, not enough milk. Inside the house was warm, lived in. Photos covered the walls. Maya with a husband and 2 children. Family gatherings. Vacations. A normal life. That's David, Maya said, noticing his gaze. My husband. He's a teacher. And those are our kids, Emma and James. 7 and 5. They're beautiful. They're asleep upstairs. I didn't tell them about you yet. I wanted to. She trailed off, handing him coffee. I wanted to see if you were okay first. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Dr. Reeves told you everything, Kieran finally said. She told me about the engineers. About what you've been doing since. About Tertia 7 and the Corvathians. Maya's hands wrapped around her own cup. She didn't have to tell me why you disappeared. I figured that out years ago. You couldn't live with what you'd done, and you couldn't face us knowing what you'd become. I killed innocent people, Maya. While wearing a uniform that was supposed to protect them. You were lied to. Manipulated. Used as a weapon by people who didn't care about the truth. I still pulled the trigger. Yes, you did. Maya's directness cut through his self-recrimination. And you've spent 15 years punishing yourself for it? How much longer, Kieran? How much more penance do you need to pay? I don't know. Maybe forever. That's not penance. That's suicide by installments. She set down her cup. Do you know what Mom said before she died? 5 years ago, cancer. She made me promise that if I ever found you, I'd tell you something. Kieran's throat tightened. What? She said, tell your brother that mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. And he's responded by trying to save everyone he can. That's not a monster. That's a hero who won't forgive himself. She didn't know what I'd done. She knew you. She knew the boy who cried for 3 days when his dog died. The teenager who got suspended for fighting bullies. The young man who enlisted because he wanted to protect people. Maya's voice grew stronger. The person who made that mistake is the same person who's saved thousands since. You're not one or the other, Kieran. You're both. And you need to accept both. I don't know how. Then learn. Come back. Not to work, not to the next mission. Come back to being human. Come back to us. She reached across and took his hand. I've missed my brother. Emma and James deserve to know their uncle. And you deserve to remember that you're more than a weapon. Kieran looked at their joined hands. Hers were soft, unmarked by violence. His were calloused, scarred from a dozen near-death experiences. 2 different worlds, touching across an impossible gulf. I'm not sure I know how to be that person anymore. So you'll learn. Starting now. Starting here. Maya smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Stay for dinner tomorrow. Meet David and the kids. Let them see that Uncle Kieran exists. Let yourself see it too. For the first time in 15 years, Kieran felt something other than duty or guilt. It was small, fragile, barely there. It was hope. The balance. 2 weeks passed like a dream. Kieran spent time with Maya's family, played with his niece and nephew, had dinner with people who knew him only as Uncle Kieran, not as Envoy Vasher or Terminus operative. He slept more than 4 hours a night for the first time in years. He laughed. He remembered what it felt like to be human. But reality as always came calling. On his last day of leave, Director Okonkwo requested a meeting. They met at a quiet cafe in the Arcology, overlooking San Francisco Bay. You look better, Okonkwo observed. Dr. Reeves was right to insist on this leave. I needed it, Kieran admitted. More than I realized. Good. Because I need to tell you something, and you need to hear it with a clear head. Okonkwo pulled up a secure holographic display. The Corvathians have formally proposed a treaty. Full diplomatic recognition, mutual defense pact, technology exchange, the works. Chancellor Ziwa is calling it, the Vasher Accord, in your honor. That's unexpected. It gets better. 3 other species in the Corvathian Empire have approached us separately. They want to know if humanity would support their independence movements. They see us as a potential ally against imperial control. Kieran's expression grew serious. That could destabilize the entire region. It could. Or it could be the beginning of the kind of galaxy you described to ZYX. One built on cooperation rather than domination. Okonkwo leaned back. The Secretary General wants your input. You're the one who negotiated this situation. What do we do next? Kieran was quiet for a long moment, watching ships cross the bay. Finally he spoke. We help them. Not with military force, that would just make us the new empire. But with support, resources, diplomatic backing. We show the galaxy that humanity's strength isn't just in our weapons, but in our willingness to use that strength to protect others' freedom. That's idealistic. Maybe. But idealism backed by the capability to enforce it isn't naive, it's policy. Kieran turned to face her. Director, I've spent 15 years being humanity's weapon. I've been death in a suit, the nightmare that protects us from other nightmares. But Maya reminded me of something. We're not just trying to survive. We're trying to build something worth surviving for. Okonkwo smiled. Dr. Reeves said this leave would be good for you. I didn't expect it to make you philosophical. I'm still the same person. I'll still do the terrible things that need doing. I'll still carry the weight so others don't have to. Kieran's voice was steady. But I'm going to do it while remembering why it matters. Not just because it's my duty, but because there are people like Maya, David, Emma, and James out there. People living normal lives, experiencing normal joys, facing normal problems. That's what we're protecting. That's what makes the cost worthwhile. So you're coming back to active duty? Yes. But on different terms. Kieran met her eyes. I want the Terminus protocol reactivated fully. I want operatives positioned across human space, ready to respond to threats. But I also want us to start training a new generation. People who can do this job without losing themselves in it. People who can be death when necessary and human when possible. That's a tall order. It's the only sustainable one. We can't protect humanity by sacrificing our humanity. We need to find a balance. Okonkwo considered this. I'll bring it to the council. But Kieran, there's something else you need to know. Chancellor Zyxthara included a personal message with the treaty proposal. He wants to meet with you again. In person. On neutral ground. What does he want? To understand how humanity managed to scare him without actually being as dangerous as he thought we were. And to discuss what he's calling the real conversation, how to build that cooperative galaxy you challenged him to create. Kieran laughed, a genuine sound. He figured out the bluff. Some of it at least. But he also realized something important. The bluff only worked because we could have made it real if pushed. That's not weakness. That's strategic thinking. Okonkwo stood. Will you meet with him? Yes. But not as Envoy Vasher, weapon of humanity. As Kieran Vasher, person who's seen what war costs and wants desperately to find another way. He stood as well. And I'm bringing Maya. Your sister? Why? Because Zyxthara needs to see that I'm not just death in a suit. I'm someone's brother. Someone's uncle. A person with connections to normal life, normal joy, normal humanity. He needs to understand that every time he threatens humanity, he's threatening billions of Mayas. And that's why we'll fight so hard if we have to. That's either brilliant or insane. Maybe both. Kieran smiled. But then that's humanity in a nutshell, isn't it? Epilogue. The real conversation. 3 months later, on the neutral station Harmony Point, Kieran stood with Maya in an observation lounge. Through the viewport, the combined fleets of humanity and the Corvathian Empire held position, not in confrontation but in ceremony. Chancellor Zyxthara entered, accompanied only by Varys. The Chixian's mandibles clicked in what Kieran had learned was a greeting. Envoy Vasher. And this must be your sister. Zyxthara's scales showed colors of respect. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Thank you for requesting it, Chancellor. Kieran gestured to seats around a simple table. I believe you wanted to discuss the future. I did. But first, I must confess something. Zyxthara settled into his seat with surprising grace. I know you exaggerated humanity's capabilities. My intelligence services have determined that many of your claims were optimistic. Maya tensed, but Kieran remained calm. You're correct. We weren't as prepared as I suggested. But we could have been, given time and motivation. And you provided both. Indeed. Zyxthara's laugh was like grinding stone. You turned our aggression into the catalyst for your own military expansion. Quite clever. But that's not why I'm angry. You're angry? At myself. For not seeing what was obvious. The Chancellor leaned forward. You didn't come to Velros Prime as a weapon, Envoy Vasher. You came as a mirror. You showed me what the Corvathian Empire had become. A civilization so confident in its power that it couldn't recognize genuine strength in others. So arrogant that it mistook patience for weakness. Varys spoke up. The Chancellor has spent the last 3 months reviewing every decision that led to our confrontation with humanity. He's concluded that imperial expansion has made us stagnant. Stagnant and cruel, Zyxthara added. Your sister, may I speak frankly, Miss Chin? Maya nodded, still uncertain. Your brother frightened me. Not because of his weapons or his ships, but because of his conviction. When he spoke of protecting humanity, I saw something we'd lost millennia ago. Purpose beyond domination. Strength in service of something greater than power itself. Zyxthara's scales dimmed. The Corvathian Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. But in all that time, what have we built? What have we created that will outlast us? We've conquered worlds, but we haven't inspired them. We've accumulated power, but we haven't used it for anything meaningful. You're proposing reform, Kieran said. I'm proposing revolution. Peaceful, gradual, but fundamental. The Chancellor pulled up a holographic document. This is the draft of a new imperial charter. It transforms the Corvathian Empire from an autocracy into a federation. Member species would have genuine autonomy. Decisions would be made by council, not decree. Military power would be used for defense and peacekeeping, not conquest. Maya leaned forward, reading the document. Her eyes widened. Chancellor, this would fundamentally change your entire civilization. Yes. And it will take centuries to implement fully. But it's necessary. Because you were right, Envoy Vasher. Zuexthara looked directly at Kiran. The galaxy is changing. More species will develop advanced technology. More civilizations will reach for the stars. The question isn't whether the old order will fall, it's whether we'll evolve before it collapses violently. Kiran felt Maya's hand find his under the table. He squeezed it gently, drawing strength from her presence. This is more than I hoped for, Chancellor. But I have to ask, why? Why risk 10,000 years of tradition? Why trust humanity when we've proven we can be just as dangerous as you are? Because of that. Zuexthara pointed at their joined hands. Because you brought your sister to a diplomatic meeting. Because even after everything you've done, every terrible choice you've made, you're still connected to ordinary life. You're still human in the ways that matter. He stood, walking to the viewport. The Corvathian Empire has produced great warriors, Envoy Vasher. Brilliant tacticians. Fearless leaders. But we've forgotten how to produce people who fight because they love something, not because they fear losing power. You reminded me that strength without purpose is just violence waiting for a target. Varys added, the Chancellor has been meeting with the species seeking independence. He's offering them something unprecedented, the chance to leave the Empire peacefully if they wish, or to remain as equals if they prefer. Some will leave, Zuexthara acknowledged. Some will stay. Either way, the Empire I inherited will not be the Empire I leave behind. And I'm terrified, Envoy Vasher. Absolutely terrified. But I'm also hopeful for the first time in longer than I can remember. Kiran stood, offering his hand in the human gesture of respect. Zuexthara looked at it, then at Varys, who clicked encouragement. The Chancellor reached out, his scaled hand enveloping Kiran's. To the future, Kiran said. Whatever it brings. To the future, Zuexthara agreed. And to the understanding that sometimes, the greatest strength is knowing when not to use it. As they shook hands, Maya watched with tears in her eyes. Outside the viewport, human and Corvathian ships began moving in a coordinated dance, not of war but of celebration. Fireworks exploded in the void, visible light against the darkness, a reminder that even in the cold of space, beauty could exist. Kiran looked at his sister, then at Zuexthara, then out at the display. For 15 years he'd been death in a suit. The weapon humanity needed. The nightmare that protected against other nightmares. But maybe, just maybe, he could be something else too. Someone's brother. Someone's uncle. Someone who'd made terrible mistakes and terrible choices, but who kept trying to make them mean something. Someone who'd learned that true strength wasn't about being the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. It was about choosing not to be, even when you could. The fireworks continued, painting light across the darkness, as 3 civilizations began the long, difficult work of building something better than war. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be quick. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when violence seemed like the only answer. But it would be worth it. Because that's what humanity had learned, through 10,000 years of mistakes. That peace was always worth fighting for. Even when you were death itself.